Talk to us.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you. That prayer was so peaceful. I almost fell asleep, but I'm only human, yeah?
Yes.
So, for the next 3 hours, we're going... No, I'm just kidding. If anybody's new, they might take me serious, yeah? First, thank you for being here. I can take no credit for the material tonight. It's all from the book, yeah? Specifically, Heaven and Hell, Chapter 7. There's a little bit at the end on modern science, some research we'll talk about. I did find that. Anybody ever read Heaven and Hell? Yeah? It's one of my favorite books. Let me put a picture here. Those are the 5 books of the codification of Spiritism, in the order they were published. So Heaven and Hell is the 4th book, and it's a beautiful book, a scary book, a happy book, very descriptive. It is a compilation or a grouping of testimonials, if you will, of spirits telling us their story. Some very sad stories, some very hopeful stories, how they spent their time, things that they did, things they wish they had done or not done. And it's very eye-opening, a reminder, a guide, if you will, about how precious every minute is here on earth. We like to talk about, I should say I like to talk about this crap. I don't know if everybody does, but this is like my favorite slide. I think I put it in 9 out of 10 of my presentations. Because it reminds me where I started, right? The bottom left. Simple and lacking knowledge. And it tells me where I'm going, to become a pure spirit. And I'm somewhere down towards the bottom still, right? But I'm working on it. And this book, Heaven and Hell, is a reminder of this lifetime that we're in right now. Whether it's 1 year, 10 years, 80 years, 100 years, right? I think I just saw somebody, it's 116, yeah? Oldest living human right now, right? What we do in that window of time, right? Because what am I? What are you? We're eternal beings, yeah? Spirit, trapped in this physical body right now, right? Kind of restricted, but still an eternal spirit in this life. And what we do in this life determines what happens next. We place ourselves in our new reality every second, right? Every time we make a choice. And where we started this life is a direct connection to where we ended the last, right? Different body, different things, same spirit. We don't magically move up this evolutionary ladder, this spiritual hierarchy, just because we pass into the next life. We essentially start the next life where we ended this one. Make sense? All right, we can go home now. We're done. Right. So what does Chapter 7 of Heaven and Hell talk about? We joke, right, about our tendencies. We joke about it's just the way I am. That's how my parents raised me. Or my mom tells me I was born this way, right? We all have these tendencies. Some of those tendencies are definitely inherent to the soul. Right, more than we probably think. Specifically tied to the moral development of the spirit. So the things that we've done in the past as a spirit or in previous lives that's tied to the spirit come with us. And those moral imprints, if you will, the moral character of our spirit has a lot to do with how we are shaped morally in this life. Now, that doesn't mean that our genes and our biology don't impact. There's definitely physical characteristics that we inherit that are definitely tied to biology. But more than we think are definitely inherent to the soul. How many of you have kids? A lot of you, yeah? How about more than one kid? Differences between them, yeah? Most of the time, even with the same parents, right, for all the kids, there's big differences from from kid to kid. I have one kid that, don't get me wrong, they're all wonderful, and I love them very much. But two of them are twins, all right? And they're not here, yeah? Okay, good. We won't let them watch the video. But one of them, if there's a problem at school, if someone offends them or upsets them, I'll listen to the story and I'll be mad. It's like, what did they do to you? What? I mean, maybe I'm not saying that, I'm listening, but that's what I'm thinking. How could they do that to this little girl? The other one, I love her just as much. And she'll tell me a similar story where somebody did something wrong or hurt her. And my first thought is, what did you do? You know what I mean? Just their different personality, right? I just know how they are. And so part of me is guilty as a father. I shouldn't feel that way, but I just know them. But we're all like that. So we can have predispositions to anger. Some of us have short tempers since we were kids. Some of us have been lazy forever. I spent a decade or so kind of lazy, but I grew out of it. Some of us have vice tendencies or sensuality tendencies. We're just different. And the question always is where does that come from? Right? Is that in my genes, or was that part of my soul? Right? Did those characteristics carry over from my soul? And this chapter dives into that and tells us that many of these things are not necessarily biological. They're a combination of where we left off, where our moral development is, our level of growth previously, and physical as well to a degree. But the soul, the status of the soul, the enlightenment or the involvement of the soul morally has a lot to do with this. So we joke, right? We often say, it's just the way I am. I drive fast. It's just the way I am. It's because I played video games as a kid, Grand Prix. It's just me, right? But the fact is, I choose to drive fast, right? It's not just because that's who I am. It's my choice. And they tell us that, we can use this excuse, we can make this statement, we can believe that with our hearts and our minds. But the fact is that the cerebral organs, right, the brain, right, that corresponds to mental aptitudes owe their development to the activity of the soul. Let's repeat that, the activity of the soul. Because, yes, I'm a human. I'm trapped in this body tied to my soul, tied to my spirit. Right? So the activity of my spirit, previous lives as well, kind of dictate. The development is the effect, not the cause. It's what I've done in the past. It's my level of involvement that is in effect. It's not the other way around. And that's complicated at first. Does that make sense? I hope? Good. I was going to ask you to explain it if I had any questions. For example, right? A man is not a musician because he has the beat of music in him, right? Some kids are born with the gift of music. Some kids are born with the gift of language. Some kids are born they're good with their hands. My brother, since the time he was little, he was always the guy that put together the Christmas presents. He didn't even have to read the instructions. He was just gifted with his hands, right? We all have something usually that stands out, right? And they tell us in chapter 7 is a person's a musician simply because his spirit is already a musician. And that's true for many different faculties or many different characteristics of us as when we're born. We all tend to have something. Some of us more than others, but it's not because simply because that was already in the spirit. They go on to say that if the activity of the human spirit acts upon the brain during the earthly life, then it must also act upon the other parts of the organism as well. So the spirit that we're tied to, that we're connected to, our body, if you will, think of our body almost as a prison for the spirit, right? When we're discarnated, right, when we pass and we're in the spirit world, our spirit is free to go and travel. When we sleep, right, when we're unconscious, if you will, the spirit can travel. It's free. But during those waking hours, our body acting in a human way, still influenced by the spirit. It transcends throughout the whole organism. It's not just the brain. It's not just the human side. It's all together. Uh-oh. Look at that. I messed up. I'm only human, that's right. So, the spirit as the artisan, or is the artisan, of the physical body, which fashions for itself in order to fit it to the manifestations of its tendency. So, think about that life between lives that we've talked about. We die, we cross, we heal, we learn, we prepare, right? By the time we were blessed with another reincarnation, with another life, a lot of decisions have been made, right? We've come to an understanding of things we need to correct from previous existences. We've made a plan, along with our mentors and our guides, of what we need to accomplish. What are we working on, right? And we decide things with our body, socioeconomic, geography, things we need to work on. So think about people that are born with terrible diseases or deformities, right? There's a reason for that. Think about people that are born with none of those issues and perhaps advanced moral characteristics. None of this happens by chance. Your spirit, you, right, in that life between lives, in that errant state, as it's called, or that state of before you come back, you've made a plan, and you craft your body, you shape your organism, if you will, your shell, your envelope for your next life, to be prepared, one, at the level you are morally, and challenging to the needs that you have to overcome. Nothing is by chance. All of us at some point in our life face challenges. Some appear more challenged than others. Some appear to reface challenges. Some seem to have nothing going on. But it's not by chance. It's all predetermined in that sense, in a big picture kind of a way. And when we encounter these improved bodies of more advanced beings, they're not the product of some distinct creation, like God blessed them more than me or you, right? It's all part of the evolution, right? It's all part of the plan for them to better themselves, and they come in the shape, in the form of the challenges that they need to accomplish the mission that they've been tasked with, that they've chosen to undertake, right? Rather, they tell us they're the result of more enlightened action of the spirits incarnated in them, right? They basically, think about it, whatever your trade is, or your craft, or your skill, your hobby, it gets better and better the more you practice, the more you work it. You make mistakes, you learn from your mistakes, you go out and you do more, you make more mistakes, you learn, right? And you get better and better. Same thing with our spirit, same thing with the bodies we come with, right? We come with improved tools, right, and methods, and it works in proportion as we develop our moral and intellectual faculties. So, for example, I'm not going to take my car with me when I die. I'm not going to take the money in the bank. I'm not going to take, I don't know, name any other material thing, right? This coin I carry in my pocket sometimes that I like. None of that's going to go with me. But the attributes of my moral fiber, right? Am I honest? Am I trustworthy? Am I just as good when nobody's around as opposed to when people are watching me, right? All of those choices, all of those qualities or lack thereof, stay with me, and they carry over. That intellectual faculty, my education, my intelligence, that's not material, yeah? The books I used to learn, or the tools I use for my craft, those are material. They go away. They don't come with me. But my intelligence, my intellect, and my moral fiber stay with my spirit. And come back with me, right? In a new body, with a new mission. Well, same mission, just the next chapter, yeah? Right? Good? All right, awesome. And we're reminded again that this is just simply a natural consequence. The moral qualities of each incarnated spirit must modify the qualities of blood and secretions. This is kind of deep, right? Just getting into biology a little bit. Causing them to be produced in more or less abundance, which gives them more or less activity. So the mission that we have before us, the mission that we created, the goals that we created before we reincarnated, are all part of the spirit, its moral development, and working with the body that was created for it to move along its mission. I love this one. It's not the food. Eat whatever you want. Man, I've been doing so well lately, right? It's not the food that excites the organ of taste. And they remind us, and this is truth with science, right? There's supposedly, I'm not touching the podium. There's atoms and molecules, right, in between here. Same thing with food. It doesn't make contact with the palate. The flow of saliva, my excitedness about it, like Pavlov's dog, yeah? When you ring the bell, he's salivated, yeah? It's not, the flow of that's caused by direct action of the spirit, whose sensuality is aroused and whose thought influences his palate. We've talked about this before. MRI studies of the brain, right, with what people are thinking about. Bad memories, bad actions, lights up the area of the brain responsible for that. Same thing with passions, with things that make you feel good, lights the area up of the brain. I'll show you a couple slides at the end. Dr. Newberg, I forget his first name now. The book's about maybe 9 years old, but he continues his research today. And he looked at functional MRI studies of religious people, nuns, monks, Buddhists, Sikhs, before and after prayer. Even people, he put through an 8-week study where he took people and had them learn a short mantra, kind of like transcendental meditation, where you say a mantra over and over. He had them do it for 12 minutes a day. He took functional MRI images of the brain before they started the 8-week regimen, and then 8 weeks later. And sure enough, there was about a 15% increase in areas of the brain related to impulse control, creativity. And the big one, in more recent research that he's done, it ties those areas of the brain to similar areas of serotonin release, right? That same thing that comes out when you exercise, it's apparent in people that also have some addictive characteristics. So I guess we're addicted to spiritism, right? But it lights up these areas of the brain that are tied to serotonin and feeling good, which is a good sign, right? So the food itself, the activity itself, if you will, is not necessarily the draw, right? Or it's not the human piece of us that is drawn necessarily to those things. It's the status of our spirit, the moral development of our spirit. Our tendencies on earth in this human body are driven by the spirit, right? Because we came back to earth in a similar state spiritually. Of moral development as when we left previously. So if we were into the things in the previous life, there's a good chance we're going to be drawn and attracted or have an affiliation or a desire to do those things in this life. But we also have the will to overcome those that are negative. So they go on to tell us that the weak and indolent spirit leaves his incarnated body in a state corresponding to his character. So again, imagine, I don't know, when I die, I'm in some crazy situation. I'm not living the best life. I'm in turmoil in some kind of triangle, or I'm in the middle of some type of amoral activity. Well, if I'm caught up in that and I die, it doesn't just leave me, right? It stays with me. That's why we should always try to be living morally upright, because that's who we are. That's our status at the time. An energetic and active spirit will give to its incarnated body qualities in harmony with the energy and activity of its nature. So again, whatever our nature is prior to that incarnation, we're going to give ourselves, we're going to have those characters and those qualities when we come back. They remind us also that the action of the Spirit upon its physical envelope is so evident as to be incontestable. Hence, we often see the most serious organic disorders produced as the effect of some violent moral upsetting. So, again, think of those people, right, that have some serious organic disorders. We call them diseases. We call them disorders. We call them difficult situations, right? We all know people, right? Some of us, right? You may not see it on the surface, but it's inside of us. All kinds of situations, right? Those are there because of things that we've done, things that we're working on, things to challenge us. How many of you thank God for those challenges? It's hard, yeah? I'm somewhat fortunate, I guess. I've never had a life-threatening situation that I guess my parents tell me between the ages of 1 day and 1 year, I almost died 3 times. So maybe I worked through them as an infant, right? I don't know. But as an adult, other than self-inflicted nonsense that I've done to myself, I haven't necessarily been challenged. But my time will come, yeah? I'm only human, right? It's going to happen. But some of you in this room have died, right? Or come close and come back. Or fighting right now a difficult situation, right? Have you thanked God for that? Yeah? I don't know if I can, right? I have a, I guess, a spiritual mentor, you'd say. I listen to he's an old man now, and it's hard to understand him currently because of a stroke. But I listened to his stuff when he was in his 20s, his 30s. He's got decades of wonderful stuff on tape that I listened to. But he has a documentary on Netflix, and it's called, I don't even know the name. Something about grace. But the moral or the message he gives is about his stroke. Going home. Yeah. Look at you. Look at you. Yeah, going home. Exactly. He talks about how the stroke, before the stroke, he's a prolific author, he's prolific speaker, a spiritual leader, whatever, I don't follow him for his religious beliefs, but his simplicity of be here now, right? Be here right now in the moment. So he has this stroke, and he tells the story about he was mad at himself, because he's a holy man, right? People follow him and listen to him. And he has a stroke, and he's on the floor, knowing he's having a stroke, looking at the ceiling. And the first thing that comes to mind is not about God and eternity, right? It's about, how am I going to get up? Right? So he's facing this life-challenging moment, and he's mad at himself because he's only human, and he thinks about, how am I get off this floor? Right? But he reminds us that in this moment of the stroke, and the days and months and the years following the stroke, that he now thanks God every day for his stroke, because it took him within. Instead of being that prolific, outspoken person, he had, and never counting on other people, he had the resources and the desire to take care of himself. Never needed help, right? Now he's totally dependent on other people that help him shower, that help him bathe, that help him eat, right? Little by little, he's more independent, but he thanks God every day for his stroke, and I don't know if I could do it. I don't know if I could. I'd like to think that I could, right? But that's what they're telling us here, right? Regardless of whatever travesty, it may seem terrible that we're facing this disease, this disorder, it's tied to some previous or current moral upsetting that you need to work through. Thank God that you're going through it, because if you work through this, right, it's going to help you evolve. But the moral state of the Spirit dictates this in many ways. It's not just by chance. It's not just biology. Sounds harsh, yeah? But it also sounds beautiful, right? We're blessed with another life. We're blessed with challenges that we've kind of set forth for ourselves based on our actions or our lack of actions. And we have this opportunity each and every day to work through them, to thank God for them. And that book, Heaven and Hell, I showed you the cover, right? This is chapter 7, is full of stories of spirits that have lived before us, with words of wisdom, words of advice, words of remorse. And it irks the heck out of me, right? Because when I read it, I realize how much time I'm wasting every day. right? Until I get up here and talk, and then I'm good for a couple of days. Yeah? So, anyways, let's continue, because we only have, 2 more hours. So individual temperament, they tell us, is definitely determined, at least in part, by the nature of the spirit, thus viewed as the cause and not the effect. That angry child, that impatient child, that peaceful child, that temperament, right, comes with them to a degree from previous or the current status of the soul or spirit at birth. It's not all biology. Now, there's exclusions to this, right? There are situations where external factors can create situations, right? Let's think about this. Let's say we talk about, let's think about really polluted cities, right? You live in, Singapore? It's got a lot of pollution. L.A., maybe, got a lot of pollution. China is notorious for pollution, right? Or there's flu, there's airborne viruses that are more heavily concentrated in some areas of the world. You can live in or let's say you live someplace and there's a terrible earthquake, right, and you get deformed because of that. There are outside influences, there are outside factors that can change your situation that you didn't necessarily create. But those situations do test you at the time. Don't necessarily change the status of your moral evolution, but definitely put you to the test in those moments where you are exposed or become impaired or damaged, hurt in some way by the negligence of others or by the environment or by an act of Mother Nature. Yeah, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time because of an earthquake. Right? That can definitely injure you. It can hurt you. Doesn't necessarily mean you created that situation, but it does test you with yet another challenge to overcome adversity. So there are outside influences to a certain degree. Then they start talking about the reality of this human factor, yeah? Weakness of the flesh, right? If we use it to blame others, if we use it as an excuse for the wrongs we've committed, it's simply what they call an evasive attempt to escape the responsibility of our own misdeeds, right? The flesh is weak. It's not the flesh, right? What do they say? The flesh is only weak because the spirit is weak, right? We all have weaknesses, if you will, that we work on, that we overcome, or we don't, right? It's not necessarily willpower. It's not necessarily that we're weak, or that the human factor lends ourselves to make mistakes. It's simply because the spirit is weak. Ultimately, our spirit, your spirit, my spirit, we're here. We're attached. Right? The body is simply an extension, right? It's the way we manipulate the world around us. It's the way we interact with the world around us, and we have to make choices each and every moment. And we can be weak, if you will, and make bad choices, or choose not to do the right thing, just ignore things, right? Even if you don't make a choice, you're still making a choice. My kids watch a show on YouTube. It's kind of silly. It's parents watching their children on a hidden camera with a moral dilemma, and the parents have to decide what's the kid going to do. Right? And it's amazing to watch some of this stuff. Simple things as somebody drops a $5 bill, or they're judging artwork, and they know that the teacher drew the ugliest one, but they have to pick the best one. And, well, they tell the teacher that they have the best one just because she's there. Just stuff like that. So something simple as that to more extreme situations, right? Do you do the right thing? And if you don't, if we're weak, right, which we can all be that way, right? We all have moments. It's not the body, it's not the human factor. It's because the spirit is weak. Ultimately, the spirit is responsible for all its deeds, right, during this earthly lifetime. The flesh, what do they tell us? The flesh has neither thought nor will or mastery over spirit. My body is at the whim of my spirit, right? It's that simple and yet that complicated. The spirit thinks and wills action. The spirit gives to flesh the various qualities corresponding to its own instinctive tendencies, like the artist stamps the imprint of their genius on their work. That's profound. truly is. And I think I'm in control, right? I'm not. My spirit is. I'm simply here to work and be an instrument of those qualities that came with this body or my spirit. And I have free will to choose. It's awesome. But what does that mean? Right? What does that tell us, right? The spirit who's freed himself from the instances of materials. Life fashions for him a human body lacking obstacles to the aspirations of his spiritual nature. And this is the best part of, I think, the whole talk. A man thus incarnated will eat to live, as opposed to living to need. See the difference? Food, in this analogy, right, is simply a necessity. Right? We simply eat to nourish our body. I spent decades living to eat, like working, making money, having fun, and getting big, right? Because I love to eat. But if we break this down to its simplest form, we're here on earth to work. We're on a mission to correct our past mistakes, to love, to grow, to follow the light, if you will. And how much time of each day do we spend eating to live? Simply fueling our body, working our plan, and doing our best to grow. Opposed to or compared to living in the moment, indulging, having fun, not doing our best for others, seeking that material path. Not judging here, just simply saying that we could probably all do a little bit more focusing on the spiritual path as opposed to the material path. Each human being, then again, is fully responsible for their own actions of this life. And accountability is proportionate to the intellectual development of the spirit of each individual. This is the part that kills me, right? The more enlightened the spirit, the less excusable the action. Here's the problem. Let me think. I've known Christiane we've been married 14 years, 15 years, right? I've known that I was a spiritist. She said, I probably told you the story, but when she first met me, she told me I was a spiritist because of what I believed. And I had no idea what it was. I didn't study, I didn't read. So for 15 years now, I've been coming to spiritist centers. For 9, 10 years, I've been coming up here talking, volunteering, doing different things. So I'm a little bit educated, right? I'm more responsible now. When I didn't know, it was okay. I slept well at night. I didn't have guilt or remorse. I didn't feel like I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. But I've read these books. I tell other people what I read in these books. I try to live what's in these books. And I fall short every stinking day. I drop the ball. I fumble. And it didn't hurt before. Now it hurts. Because I know. I cannot excuse my actions as much as I could 15 years ago. So if you don't want to get better, stop coming. But if you want to get better and help me get better, keep coming every week. Right? We'll help each other. Okay? But the more we know, the more responsible we become. Right? Because the more developed our intellect is, right, that stays with the Spirit, goes with us to the next life. Our moral sense, right? We're born with a knowledge of right and wrong. It's in our conscience. But the more sense we have about that, the more responsible we are. And we don't lose that. It stays with us. What's the next one? Identifying good and evil. We know right from wrong. I still think of those cartoons, a little angel on this shoulder, a little devil on this shoulder, right? I don't want to listen to this guy, right? And now I know about this guy, right? The more we know, the more responsible we are, right? At our spirit level, right? So then the better, and as these develop, the better our choices are going to be, right? It's beautiful. And the more we develop as individuals, the more society develops, the higher and higher the energy of earth will be. And at some point, being on earth will be less of a tribulation, I believe. But I think we have some work to do. So that's chapter 7 of Heaven and Hell. Here's a copy. I was in a presentation once, and I just snapped a picture. But that's the name of one of Dr. Andrews' Newberg's books. This is Your Brain on Religion, and it's all about areas of the brain that are stimulated by religious activities. And then another book that he wrote, How God Changes Your Brain. And it's not just religious, it's not just spiritism, it's not just philosophy. There's science now that proves that participating in religious activities, participating in devout activities, simply praying, meditating for 12 minutes a day changes your brain. So I invite you to try to spend 12 minutes a day doing something religious, something spiritual, something meditative. Right? Just try 12 minutes a day so that our brain changes. Thank you so much for coming and listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you all. It made me feel a little more human. All right, guys. And as I feel a little more human today,